Blog
evening.
Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me to reveal the secrets of the voice. Thank you for writing and for listening to last week's show. And today we're going into some very important conversations. And I want to start out by saying a few things that you may like, you may not like, but that's the way it is. And since I'm here to tell you the truth about what the voice is and reveal to you what the voice is, then I have to be truthful about everything. I challenge the world. I challenge the teachers. I challenge the institutions. I challenge great singing in the world today because it isn't great singing anymore. Our topic today is the voice, the difference in techniques, speech level versus Giro vocal motion technique, which most of you have absolutely no clue what it is, unless, of course, you've read my books, The Voice, A Spiritual Approach to Singing, Speaking, and Communicating, the fourth one being The Kabbalah of the Voice, or the new book, which is The Secrets of the Voice in the Zohar Revealed. These books are not for everybody, and not everybody is my student. And as many voice teachers as there are, so there are as many opinions, and that's okay. However, as I said, my challenge to the world, anywhere, anytime, any voice, any age, that means young, very young, from about 5 years on, until 95. The voice is there for a lifetime. The voice is there to serve you, to serve your public. And the voice is there to give to the world. One of my very favoriteest songs in the whole world, and one of my favoriteest artists, is Mario del Monaco. One of the great, great voices of all time. And Otello, I don't think we'll ever have one again like that. Maybe we will, and I hope we do. But unbelievable voice, incredible personality, and I want to share with you one of my favorite songs in the world and show you what Giro vocal motion technique means, because Mario del Monaco and his generation sang in Giro vocal motion technique. Where it went, why it went, how it went, and why nobody knows it. Those are the things that we're going to discuss. Here is Un amore così grande, a love so great. What can I say? This is Giro Vocal Motion. Let me begin by speaking about speech level. Speech level is a technique that basically is being used throughout the world. And what it is exactly what you're being told. Speech level. Speech level meaning the mouth, the jaw, the throat, the inside of the mouth, the movement and the manipulation of the mouth in order to create sound, in order to create word, and in order to bring out the sounds and the lyrics and the words that you need to get out of your mouth. Now, this sounds very, very reasonable. Big problem with that is a few things. First of all, you're dependent upon a tremendous amount of the air that needs to be inhaled and then exhaled with the sound and the word. But inhaling automatically, when you do that, brings you down into the throat, brings you down into the chest, and brings you down, if you know how, into the diaphragm. Now, our conversation is not going to be a 5-minute conversation on this, that, and the other, but one thing I will tell you. The conversation of diaphragm is nothing more than a support system to keep the throat open, to keep the throat without involvement, and to keep the relaxation of the throat. Not what we see today, which is stressing on the throat, stressing on the muscles, stressing on the jaw, pushing, belting, forcing, out with it. That's not voice. That's screaming and yelling and destroying an instrument. 40 years ago, 50 years ago, the idea of vocal cord surgery, the idea of singers having to go on vocal rest for months because they have nodules on their vocal cords, that they're overstressing their cords, medicines, pills, injections, these things weren't heard of. But they became very fashionable when things started to go down the drain. And in my opinion, they started to go down the drain somewhere in the middle 60s. And the singers, until that time, basically all of them, whether they were popular singers or they were crooners or they were opera singers or classical singers, it really didn't make very much difference, because the way the voice was then taught was to be a natural extension of the person. And because of the fact that there was not the availability for extraordinary digital equipment, recording equipment, microphones, digital boards that basically to the hair clean everything up, people had to study and they had to work on their instrument and they had to tune it. We talked about this in the last show. But speech level is really exactly what it says. It is at the level of speaking. So when you inhale, you're stressing on the system. And when you exhale, you also need to stress to get the sound out. Basically, the sound really comes out of a completely different place and has to leave your body without any stress. The vocal instrument need never to be touched in order for it to work. The jaw, the muscles in your face, the muscles in your throat must be absolutely and totally relaxed, because if they're not, again, you're stressing the instrument, making it uncomfortable, and basically the great height that is possible that you just heard in Mario del Monaco's voice, this ethereal, gigantic sound that is remastered, but for all intents and purposes, very little can be done to blot out where that voice is. Do yourself a favor. You'll hear it instantly. Go into YouTube and do three things. Listen to Mario del Monaco. Listen to Pavarotti. And listen to Andrea Bocelli. And then you will see three completely different voices, two techniques that are very, 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 very similar, even though the voices are completely different, and one that is completely out of line, that has nothing to do with the fluidity, with the vibration, with the air, with the sound, with the movement of the sound, with the movement of the voice. And then you can tell me, and you can write to me, who is who. I don't think that it's going to be a very difficult exercise, but it's extremely important. The same thing you can do with three sopranos. You can listen to Renata Tebaldi. You can listen to Maria Callas. And then you can listen to Anna Netrebko. And again, you will see three voices take the same aria and listen to all three of them. And listen not with the ears of what we're used to today, but listen with the ears of what you're learning in our conversation. When the voice is sitting in the place of the throat, when it exits with an exhaling of air, when it moves with the forward force of the air, you get one sound. And when it moves on the air, by the air, with something called the Giro, which in Italian means the turn, then you will understand why with Giro vocal motion you can sing for hours without ever stressing your instrument. And when you finish a concert, you can start all over again because vocally you are not tired. Vocally, you're not used up. Vocally, you have all the power in the world because the place where you're actually coming out with the voice, okay? I want to say singing from, speaking from, is a completely different place than where you would be when you are using and manipulating the throat. Let me say this. There are people who are able for a pretty long time to use their throats as a method of projecting sound. However, let me say this in the next sentence, that these voices, no matter what they sing, and whatever I say about the voice has nothing whatsoever to do with genre. That means what kind of singing you do, whether it's classical, whether it's opera, whether it's jazz, whether it's R&B, whether it's rock, pop, makes no difference. The instrument is one. The instrument is the only one you're ever going to get, and you can challenge me on that, and that's okay. But no mechanical thing is ever going to provide you with what the natural, beautiful instrument is going to give you. So what happens after you use the throat for 5, 7, 10 years, and you're in a career, and you're singing on a continual basis, and you're using the instrument continuously, meaning you sing 2, 3 times, 4 times a week, 5 times a week, and performance is performance. Microphone or not microphone, it really doesn't make any difference. Ultimately, it's the instrument that is going to be abused one way or the other. That is the reason why, after certain periods of time, and that depends again on the natural structure of the instrument, you are going to get into trouble. You are going to lose the ability to control the instrument as you wish. You're not going to have the height that you had when you started, or you're not going to have the depth. It all depends on some people. The depth goes first, and the low notes, quote unquote, low notes, something that you will understand down the line. I never ever say, because there really is no such thing. So low notes become impossible, or high notes become impossible, and you lose the height in the voice. Once you lose the height, you begin to put stuff down, and the voice begins to lose its brilliance. It begins to lose the beautiful vibrations. It begins to lose its natural charm, if you will, its natural beauty. And then you go to doctors, and then you're put on vocal rest, and then you have laser surgery to remove nodules. But once you remove nodules, and once you've touched the instrument is never, ever the same. At this point, let me tell you that I have had 2 vocal cord surgeries. My whole existence from the time I was a very small child was about singing, was about performing. Everything I ever wanted to do was sing my own music. And by the time I was 19, I had nothing left. And I had my first surgery and then a second one in my early 20s. And then I went into silence for 6 months. I wrote my questions and my answers, walked around with a little pad of paper. And for all intents and purposes, my life was over. I couldn't sing, but I also couldn't speak. At that point, I think that when you really get into trouble, you begin to realize that maybe there is something that you're doing that isn't right. And you go from one person to the next person to the next person, and everybody tells you a different story, but nobody really makes a difference. This was something I talked about last week when I spoke about Maria Callas, and of course there are many examples of singers who lose their voices, and then it's over. And then I ask, where are the teachers? Because a voice is meant to last a lifetime. A voice is meant to last until the day you die. And there are people, and there are singers in their late 70s, 80s, that have voices like young people. I have students who are well above 50 and who sound like they're 25, but they didn't come that way. They became that. And the reconstruction of an instrument that has been severely damaged, like someone who has had a significant career and has used the instrument and abused the instrument significantly, comes to me and says, put me back together again. Well, yes, I can. Depends on how willing are you to let go of what you know, take on the new things you need to know, and dedicate yourself totally and completely to an instrument that is, for all intents and purposes, never been used properly. Meaning, you can abuse the voice, and then you can come to me and you can fix it, but not fix it, but reposition it out of the throat, because in reality, the throat is a box. And we know that we cannot play any instrument inside a box. Yet we do. And speech level singing plays the instrument inside the box. It's like me opening my Steinway and going to the inside of the piano and making the strings play. I will get some sound by plucking the instrument like a guitar, but I certainly won't get, never in a million years will I get what I do out of my piano when I play it in the right place and I let the box, meaning the whole instrument, do what it needs to do, which is use what I give it, which means my technical ability, my musical ability, my interpretation, everything put together, which makes me the artist, I put into the black and whites, while the inside of the instrument is free to use the external information that I provided and tune the music. And that's what Giro vocal motion technique is. It tunes the instrument from the place where the instrument has the knowledge of its existence. So let's go into that. And let me take you back to baby. And the first thing you did was you used your voice. You screamed. Nobody taught you how. Nobody gave you any instructions. You simply did it. Interestingly, tiny little baby, huge voice, stomach pumping the whole time. And how is it possible that such a little baby comes out with such a big sound that is heard all over the house? Where does this come from? That comes from something that I call birth knowledge. And birth knowledge is given to you along with the package of everything else that you got in your life. And all of that knowledge is in one place only, and that is your brain. Only the brain knows how to play the instrument. Only the brain knows how to use the knowledge. Only the brain knows where it is, where that sound is, where that word is, where that place is, where all the information is stored. That means once you connect to that information, and once you know how to use that information, you have all the air in the world that you need, all of the movement, all of the height, all of the brilliance, all of the potential of the instrument, because you don't have to worry about manipulating the instrument, but you have to think about how the instrument is played, which is the knowledge which we will impart to you in our gatherings here. The first thing you have to understand is that speaking and singing is exactly the same thing. Why? Because speaking and singing uses exactly the same instrument, uses sounds, except that in singing, obviously, there are millions of combinations of sound, where in speaking we use very, very little. The other thing that's extremely important is that basically all of the sounds that the instrument can play are in a place that you cannot touch, that you cannot move, that you cannot manipulate, except with your thinking. That means that with your thinking, you're playing your instrument. With your thinking, you are moving the instrument. You're moving the sound. You're moving the words. You're moving your lips. You're moving and expressing. But you are not physically involved in pushing it out, using the instrument, making it do what you want. Instead, you're allowing the instrument to flow and to be and to lift itself on infinite amounts of air, on infinite amounts of potential, only by your thinking. Now, in order to do that, you have to have knowledge, technical knowledge of how to enter into that place, how to think the right thoughts in order to stimulate the instrument to do what it is that you're thinking. The most important thing, you have to physically get out of its way. That means you can't use what you did before. You can't push, you can't force, you can't move your muscles inside your throat. You have to work with something completely different. And that is thought, knowledge, and air. Now, air, I don't know how many people, how many students, say, oh, I don't have enough air to finish that phrase. And I turn around and I say, well, if you don't have enough air to finish that phrase in the place where you're supposed to finish it, then you basically would be on the floor, fainted, because the oxygen in your brain would be gone. And since you're still standing, the only reason you don't have enough air and you constantly have to inhale after every 2 words, after every 3 words, after every 5 words, you have to take another breath, which today in every recording you hear. Listen to recordings of 30, 40, 50 years ago without the glorious electronics that we had. You don't hear an artist go like this and disrupt the flow of a beautiful line. That is for speaking, and that is for singing. Never, ever, ever are you allowed to hear, quote unquote, the intake of air. Because in Giro vocal motion, you don't take in air. You work and you learn to work with the existing air that is being provided by your body on a continual basis. How? when you take a breath, you have to physically take in. We, on the other hand, understand that there is air coming into the body through the largest organ of the body, the skin. That air is continual, never ends, thank God, comes into the body. In the body, it's 37 degrees, 98.6 degrees, okay? Hot air rises, and where is it going? It's filling the whole body, it's filling all the cavities, it's in the blood, it's all over the place. But where it basically gathers is inside the largest hollow space where it circulates and moves continually. That is the Giro. That is the turn of the air. That is the turn of the sound we're talking about. That is ultimately the turn of the voice, which is so far removed from your instrument that it allows the instrument to be completely and totally free in order to move what needs to be moved without physical constriction whatsoever. Basically, you're going into La La Land. You're going into a place where you're completely hands off and thoughts on. How you learn to use those abilities is very, very, very technical. Extremely simple, and uses, obviously, the physicality of our bodies, but in a completely different way, thus leaving the instrument to play effortlessly. In Italian, we say, or we used to say, faccia stupida, a dumb face. Complete relaxation of the jaw. Complete relaxation of the facial muscles. The only thing that really works and does what the brain tells it to do, certainly not you, is the lips, because we need the lips, the teeth, and a little bit of the movement of the tongue for diction. But for creation, in quotes, creation of sound, we don't need the instrument. We need the knowledge which we impart onto the place that knows how to run every single thing inside the body. You don't think about how's your heart pumping, how's your stomach digesting, how your intestines moving, how do your kidneys clean out. You don't think about these things because your body knows what to do and is programmed, again in quotes, to do that. So what makes you think that you could take sounds and words and vowels and consonants out of your brain where everything lives, where everything is perceived, where everything is conceived? Take it out of the brain, physically put it into the throat, and then begin manipulation in an area that is so tight. There are larynx, there are cords, there are muscles, there is a glottis, there is an epiglottis, there is food, there is an esophagus, there is so much stuff in a tiny, tiny, tiny place. And again, there are people who are especially gifted to be able to manipulate the instrument. But those people are so rare. Normal, everyday speakers, normal, everyday singers, normal people who use their voices every day need to conceive that their instruments are fallible. Happens to everybody, just everybody, it happens to everybody. Except when you know Giro vocal motion from A to Z. And when we get into this in the future, in the next episode, you will learn about physical things that you never, ever heard of, never thought you needed to use, never perceived of their existence. Nobody ever spoke to you about it. Nobody ever mentioned anything to you. And all of a sudden, here comes Miriam and talks to you about these things that are from someplace. And yes, they are. They are from someplace. And they are not everybody's. They're not for everybody. Let's put it this way. The people who are for this are people who are incredibly generated to do things in the most perfect way, because when you don't do it right, the instrument feels it. And we create our work for the good of the instrument, for the good of the body, for the good of the mind, and for the good of the person in whom the instrument is housed. So, thank you for your time. Next week we'll have an hour. And write to me, go to the website, and God bless you all. Bye-bye.